Hey everyone, and welcome to this video. I'll just turn the light down a little bit. In this video, I'll try a different format. I'll try a book review and sprinkle in some Jungian perspectives. But I do read a lot of fiction books, and I really enjoy it. And I think reading fiction has great value, especially for the Jungian quest, because in the end, fiction books are products of the psyche ultimately, and although even if they're contemporary or whatever, they're still products of the psyche that do have a value to us, that tell us something about the eternal struggle of humankind with reality. And I think some books are to me speak more to me than to others, and I wanna sort of bring some of the books that I do think that speak to me a lot, and that may have some kind of something to provide to us as a community, and just talk about them a little bit. Now, if you're interested in having a list of the books that I would recommend you to read, fiction and non-fiction, on Jung and other topics, do check out the description of this video. You'll find a list of reading recommendations. If you enter your email address, I'll share that with you. You'll find a link in the description. And then again, I'll share a list with you. It's an annotated list of readings, essentially, that I recommend. It has over 100, I think over 200 readings on there, all annotated, with a little note, what it's about, and what aspects you should focus on, and when I recommend you reading it, and so on and so forth. But today we'll talk about this book, Betty Smith's A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. Now, I really enjoyed this novel. It's a novel. It's about 480 pages long. I can read you the biography of Betty Smith if I find it. It's probably somewhere in here. I haven't really prepared it, but where is it? Here. So, the author, Betty Smith, was born Elizabeth Wiener on December 15th, 1896, the same date as, although 5 years earlier than, her fictional heroine, Francie Nolan. This book's about Francie Nolan. The daughter of German immigrants, she grew up poor in the Williamsburg section of Brooklyn, the very world she recreates with such meticulous detail in A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. After marrying fellow Brooklynite George H.E. Smith, she moved with him to Ann Arbor, Michigan, where he was a law student at the University of Michigan. The young bride soon had 2 daughters, Nancy and Mary, and was forced to wait until the girls had entered grade school before endeavoring to complete her own formal education. Although she had not finished high school, the largely autodidactic Smith was permitted to take classes at the university, and she concentrated her studies here in journalism, drama, writing, and literature. She capped her education by winning the Avery Hopkins Award for work in drama, and did a 3-year course in playwriting at the Yale Drama School. After stints writing features for Detroit newspaper, reading plays for the Federal Theater Project, and acting in Summerstock, Smith landed in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, under the auspices, whatever that means, of the WPA. She and her first husband divorced in 1938. In 1943, she married Joe Jones, a writer, journalist, and associate director of Chapel Hill Weekly, while he was serving as a private in the wartime army. That year, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, her first novel, was published, and so on and so forth. So she's written a couple books, but essentially, the book is set. Let me just. Oh, I didn't stop the time. Okay, screw it. Well. Okay, never mind. Okay, let me just give you an overview of the content of this book. Now, the book is essentially tells you this, or traces the story of Francie Nolan, who's, again, as mentioned also in the biography, a young girl who grows up in Brooklyn, in the Williamsburg section of Brooklyn at the turn of the 20th century. And essentially, it's the story of her coming of age. Now, Francie has a brother, Neely, is his name, and her father is an alcoholic, although a very charming man, a very beautiful man, handsome man. very charming, a good father, but he has sort of the sort of alcoholic gene, if you will, running in his family, family of Irish immigrants, and her mother is a very ambitious woman, a very sort of I think also the daughter of Austrian immigrants, not German immigrants, very sort of determined, very doesn't share her feelings, that the sort of character that works herself to death in order to raise her children, because the father doesn't really work. He only does sort of occasional work on the weekends as a singer in a club, or in different clubs or different establishments. After there was an incident where the mother and the father, originally the mother and the father, so Francie's mother and father were essentially working as janitors in a school, were earning good money and living a good life essentially. And then when the mother was pregnant, the night the mother gave birth to Francine, the father got drunk and forgot to tend the school, which meant that he didn't light the fires, which led to a freezing of the pipes, which led to the pipes exploding and basically caused significant damage in the school, which caused them to get fired and lose the job, and him to start sort of this reign of drinking himself to death, essentially. Ultimately, I don't want to spoil it a lot, but essentially drinking himself to death ultimately. Now, I do have to spoil a little bit. I mean, the book just beautifully tells this or traces the story of Francine in just beautiful language and a beautiful level of detail. And what I really enjoy about the book is this level of detail that Smith gives us, basically just of this life, of this childish perspective that transforms into the perspective of a woman, and through which so many sort of gazes speak, right? It's like, you know, I'm not a literary critic, by the way. I'm just talking about this as an ignorant reader. But what I really like about this psychologically also is that it's really the story of of many characters that take shape within this childish perspective. And what I really enjoyed, and this is what I really want to highlight, is the shift of the neighborhood co-occurring with the shift of Francie's own perspective on the neighborhood and on herself, right? And this is beautiful. It's beautifully done, right? Where, you know, initially, like, the kind of things that matter are, you know, she'd collect trash throughout the week and dump the trash at the trash collector on Sundays and get a penny or two in order to buy sweets at a store. And then, you know, after a while, she when she's 17, 18, she starts to make money, and the whole action, she realizes that the sweet seller has been tricking them his whole life, basically tricking them into selling them overpriced candy and so on and so forth. And what's really beautiful is that also what I love about it is this aspect of education. Essentially, the mother saying, the mother of the mother, so her grandma saying, look, if you read everything you can get, because ultimately your education is going to bring you success, right? And that's the common doctrine of the time, right? We heard that a million times, but she does it so determinedly. Like she ends up reading a book a day from a local. She borrows a book at the local library and reads a book a day, and she becomes this very educated young woman who starts work at 15 in a newspaper place and becomes sort of the most senior or most well-regarded reader and most well-paid reader, making, you know, well, back then it was $50, I think $25 a week, so $100 a month, something, maybe a little more, I'm not entirely sure anymore, but that was a lot of money, right, back then. And she's able to afford a great life for her family. And her brother goes to high school. She doesn't end up going to high school, but she ends up taking college classes. And anyways, what I want to say is it's just this wonderful unfolding story. This wonderful unfolding story. And what I particularly like is the transformation of this inner world of this child into a woman of a different class ultimately, right? Because she ends up having enough money to go to college. She ends up the mother ends up marrying a retired, when the father dies, the mother ends up marrying a retired policeman who's aspiring to become a governor. And so the new father pays for college for Francine, and she goes off to college, and she has this sweetheart. I think this is not quite well done. She has this hot moment where she's with the soldier. She randomly meets the soldier guy through some circumstance that I don't want to go into, and she's I think 16 at this point, and they go out, and she falls in love with him somehow within one night, and then she's contemplating to go home with him, or to his hotel and spend the night, but then she doesn't, and she and that's her forever, and then she confesses her love to him after this one night. I think that's a bit overdone. It's like because initially she doesn't like him, and then suddenly she confesses her love in this kind of, I think it's just too much, but then she also has this other guy that she went to summer school. She takes summer classes in college, and so she falls in love with this other man, and they've been sort of this. It's like sort of this type of love that's more. It's warmer. It's not as hot. It's warmer, but endures for a lifetime, right? And I suppose they end up marrying. But he goes off to college in Michigan, actually, I think, or no, actually no, I don't know where, but he goes off to college to study law, and they say, well, after they turn 21, they can make the decision to marry or not, right? But anyways, what I really like is this turn really of the microcosm of this woman, of this child to woman, and the macrocosm of the neighborhood that starts to be more prosperous over time. Like you can really see that the neighborhood becomes a lot more prosperous as well, while she becomes more prosperous. And at the same time, everything stays the same, right? She changes. Her life changes. The neighborhood changes, right? You know, minimum wage goes up a little bit. There's a different party elected, whatever. But everything stays the same. And I want to illustrate this with one scene. It's just so wonderful, right? One of the very first scenes of the book is where Francine she's been collecting trash and received the penny, whatever, went to buy candy, and now she went to the library. It's a Sunday. Sunday's a great day because no school and so on. Or no, it's a Saturday because no church on Saturday. So Saturday, no church, no school. And she buys the candy. She goes to the library, borrows a book, and sits on the fire escape steps, whatever, of her building, and she reads the book while having candy in her lap, and she does that every Saturday, right? And now, and this is the sort of one of the opening scenes of the book, and it's a beautiful image, because it's also the image where the tree comes from, right? Because the tree is essentially a tree that grows in the yard of the house, up the fire stairs, and that's essentially her jungle, or she can sit in. She says it's so beautiful that she can eat the candy and read this book, sitting in this jungle, in this pure nature in the middle of Williamsburg, and so quiet and so on. She says this in the first scene. Now on the last page of the book, page 490, it's the day before she goes off to college, also the day before her mother gets married. And so the day before she moves out of her old apartment that she spent her entire life in, well, her entire conscious life in, right? Moving into a new section of the city, into a townhouse with this new husband of her mother. Well, she's going to go away. She's going to go to college anyways, but the family is never going to go back to Williamsburg, and she says she's never going to go back to Williamsburg. And this is beautiful. I'll read this to you. So she's standing in her apartment by herself, right, just before she's going to leave it, right, the last page of the book. She stood before the mirror in her white slip. As she curved her arm over her head in washing, she remembered how she had sat on the fire escape when a little girl and watched the big girls in the flats across the yards getting ready for their dates. Was someone watching her as she had once watched? She looked towards the window. Yes, across 2 yards, she saw a little girl sitting on the fire escape with a book in her lap and a bag of candy at hand. The girl was peering through the bars at Francie. Francie knew the girl too. She was a slender little thing of 10, and her name was Flory Wendy. Francie brushed out her long hair, braided it, and wound the braids around her head. She put on fresh stockings and white high-heeled pumps. Before she slipped a fresh pink linen dress over her head, she sprinkled violet sachet powder on a square cotton and tucked it inside her brasserie. She thought she heard Faber's wagon come in. That's sort of a wagon, whatever that always comes. She leaned out of the window and looked. Yes, the wagon had come. Only it wasn't a wagon anymore. It was a small maroon motor truck with the name in gilt letters on the side, and the man making preparations to wash it wasn't Frank, the nice young man with rosy cheeks. He was a little bandy-legged, draft-exempt fellow. Now this is beautiful because it's like, it shows how the neighborhood has essentially shifted, right? Everything stayed the same. There's still this girl watching, but it's not a wagon anymore. It's a maroon motor truck. It's beautiful. She looked across the yards and saw that Florrie was still staring at her through the bars of the fire escape. Francie waved and called, "Hello, Francie." "My name ain't Francie," the little girl yelled back. "It's Florrie, and you know it too." "I know," said Francie. She looked down into the yard. The tree whose leaf umbrellas had curled around under and over her fire escape had been cut down because the housewives complained that wash on the lines got entangled in its branches. The landlord had sent 2 men and they had chopped it down. But the tree hadn't died. It hadn't died. A new tree had grown from the stump, and its trunk had grown along the ground until it reached a place where there was no wash lines above it. Then it had started to grow towards the sky again. Annie, the fir tree that the Nolans had cherished with waterings and mannerings, had long since sickened and died. But this tree in the yard, this tree that men had chopped down, this tree that they built a bonfire around trying to burn its stump, this tree lived. It lived, and nothing could destroy it. Once more she looked at Florrie Wandy reading on the fire escape. "Goodbye, Francie," she whispered, and she closed the window. It's just so beautiful, man. It's like, I think it's such a wonderful, I don't know, I think it's such a wonderful, there's not even a comment, there's not even a comment I can give to this. It's just, it's wonderful, I think. And you should read the book. I think it's a wonderful book. Very emotional, I think. And, well, ultimately, I think from the perspective, right, that, everything changes, but then yet everything stays the same, and there are certain things that never change and certain things that can never be brought down. There's just such a multi-layer. There's so many aspects in this they're just wonderful in my opinion. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this. Please do give me feedback and I can how I should construct these reviews, or if you like it, if it makes any sense to do them, and again, yeah, I'll read the book and get the reading list anyway, so I highly recommend you read this. Okay, well, take care. Thank you very much.